Mrs. Wilkins here. Today we are going to review how to simplify a fraction. This is a skill that you probably learned or remember from 4th and maybe some of you even 3rd grade. So I need you to grab your notebook and something to write with. Just like in my 5th grade class, I am going to use the colors red, yellow, blue, and green to take notes in my notebook. So if you have a notebook, I'd like for you to grab your handy dandy notebook and something to write with. All right? It's important that you have these notes in your notebook because I am going to give you the secret for simplifying fractions. There are 2 simple rules to be able to simplify a fraction. That's it. Just 2 simple rules that you have to remember. The first rule is to find the GCF, and the second rule is to divide by the GCF. Now let's break this down a little bit further. So right now, I'd like for you to write down on the top sheet of your paper rules to simplify a fraction, because there's only 2 rules that you have to memorize to simplify a fraction. Go ahead. I'll give you a second to do that now. Next, I want you to write down the first rule. The first rule is to find the GCF. And remember, GCF stands for greatest common factor. That's just an abbreviation. So you often will see it used maybe in your math book, or your parents might even say, find the GCF. And again, GCF stands for greatest. Write that down, especially if you don't remember this. Common factor. The word common means what do they have that is the same. So common means same. The second rule is to divide by the GCF. Now I just abbreviated and chose to use the division symbol. If you want to, you can write down the word divide. But I find that when I'm taking notes, it's easier for me to use picture cues because my brain likes picture cues or mnemonic devices. So divide by the GCF. And remember, GCF is just an abbreviation for greatest common factor. And that's it. Those are the 2 rules to find the GCF. Now, how do you find the GCF? In my class, we use something called a factor rainbow. So you can use a factor rainbow. There are tons of videos here on my YouTube channel and on YouTube period about how to use a factor rainbow, all right? Or you can just list the factors traditionally, okay? So if you don't know a factor rainbow, you can just make a simple list to just list your factors, okay? So those are the 2 simple rules to be able to simplify a fraction. The first rule is to find the GCF. And then the second rule is to divide by the GCF. Now, let's try to apply this rule together. For those of you who have your My Math book, volume number 2, let's go ahead and open up this book to a particular page. And this is a 5th grade book by McGraw-Hill. And you're going to open it up right now to page number 565. I would like for you to try 563 and 564 on your own. We are going to work from page 565 on applying the 2 rules to simplify a fraction that we just took down in our notebooks. All right, so now I am going to show the work in my handy dandy notebook. You can show the work either in your book on page 565 or in your handy dandy notebook. All right, so let's go ahead and start with question number 4. I'm going to label number 4 in the margin, and this is coming from my math page 565, which is also helpful to put in our notebooks when we're working. So the directions say, Write each fraction in simplest form. If the fraction is already in simplest form, write simplified. And in my day, simplified meant lowest terms, or you might hear your parents say, reduce the fraction, put it in its lowest terms. That just means simplified. All means the same thing. So number 4 is 6/10. That's the fraction that we want to put in its lowest form, reduce it, or simplify. So there are 2 rules to simplify a fraction. The first rule is to find the GCF. Let's go ahead and find the GCF by using a factor rainbow. So my number as my numerator is 6. So I'm going to find the list my factors for 6. So I say what number times 1 gets me to 6? 6. And I'm going to draw my rainbow underneath, my line for my rainbow. What number times 2 gets me to 6? 3. Okay. Is there anything else we can multiply together to get 6? No. So these are going to be our factors for 6. So I'm just going to put commas between. So my factors for 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. Now let's list the factors for our denominator, which is 10. So I say, what number can I multiply by 1, start with 1, to get to 10? What number times 1 equals 10? 10. What number can I multiply by 2 to get to 10? What number can I multiply by 2 to get to 10? Good. 5. Is there anything else we can multiply together to get to 10? So let's separate our factors with a comma. So the factors for 10 are 1, 2, 5, and 10. Now let's look. The second rule for simplifying a fraction is to divide by the GCF. Now let's look at our factors. What is the highest number that they have in common? Okay, we need to find the GCF. Common means what do they have that's the same? What's the highest factor they have in common? They both have 2 in common, and that's the highest number. So the second rule is now to take our GCF, and now we are going to divide our numerator and denominator by our GCF, in this case, which is 2. So put in my division sign, put 2 as a numerator and 2 as a denominator. I don't know if you know this, 2 divided by 2 is the same thing as dividing by 1 whole. So we are going to end up with an equivalent, or the same fraction that has the same value. 6 divided by 2 is, what's 6 divided by 2? 3. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So that means 6/10 in its simplest form is 3/5. Go ahead and write that in your book on page 565 if you're working from the My Math book. Nice work. Let's try another one together. You can show the work in your handy dandy notebook like me, or you can just show your work in your book on page 565 if you're working from a My Math book volume 2 with me. Let's look at question number 6. Okay, I'm going to write number 6 off in the margin to show my work appropriately because teachers like that. So the fraction for number 6 is 2/5. There are 2 rules to simplify a fraction. The first rule is to find the GCF, or the greatest common factor, by using a factor rainbow, which lists the factors. And the second rule is to divide by the GCF. Let's go ahead and apply that rule. So let's find the factors for the number 2. All right, how are we going to do that? We find our factors for the number 2 by using a factor rainbow. I'm going to say, what number times 1 gets me to 2? 2. Is there anything else we can multiply together to equal 2? Nope. Now let's find the factors for our denominator 5 by using a factor rainbow. What number times 1 gets me to 5? 5. Is there anything else we can multiply together to get to 5? You should say no. I don't know if you noticed this, but the numbers 2 and 5 are what we call prime. They only have 2 factors, one in itself. One in itself. It's prime. One of my 5th graders told me that a number is called prime, just like Amazon Prime. Prime promises most times 2-day shipping. If you're ordering something from Amazon Prime, it promises you 2-day shipping. And a prime number only has 2 factors, like 2 and 5 are prime. So do we have a GCF? Is there a greatest common factor for the numbers 2 and 5? There isn't. The only number that they have in common is 1, okay? So this number, 2/5, is already simplified. And in the directions, it says that if the fraction is already in its simplest form, what do we need to write? They said for you to write down the word what? Good. They said for you to write the word simplified, because this 2/5 is already in its simplest form. Great. Let's try to do another one together. Let's try number 10. All right, so this is number 10. If you're working from the My Math book, this is page 565. All right, and you could show your work in your textbook if you like, or in your handy dandy notebook. So number 10, the fraction is 21 as the numerator and 30 as the denominator. There are 2 rules to simplify a fraction. What are they? What are the 2 rules? To find the GCF and divide by the GCF. Let's start by finding the greatest common factor for 21 using a factor rainbow. What number times 1 gets me to 21? 21. What number times 2 gets me to 21? Anything? Nope, nothing times 2. Is there anything times 3 to get me to 21? Yep, 7. Is there anything else we can multiply together to get to 21? Nope. So we're done here. Now let's find our greatest common factor for 30. All right? Is there anything we can multiply together to get from 1 to 30? What number times 1 gets us to 30? Good. 30. What number times 2 gets us to 30? If you do not know what number you can multiply together to get to 30, often the margin go 2 divided by 30. Do a little division problem if you don't know. Then you say, how many times does 2 go into 3? Once. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. Now bring down the 0. How many times does 2 go into 10? 5. 5 times 2 is 10. Subtract them, left with 0. So that means when we say, what number can we multiply times 2 to get to 30? We just figured out it's 15. What number can we multiply by 3 to get to 30? Right, 10. So now we can separate our factors by commas. The factors for 21 are 1, 3, 7, and 21. The factors for 30 are 1, 2, 3, 10, 15, and 30. So now let's find the GCF. What is the greatest common factor? What's the highest number they have in common? The highest factor they have in common is 3. So now the second rule is to now divide by the GCF. Let's apply that rule. We're going to divide by 3 because that is our greatest common factor. We divide the numerator and denominator by 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7. 30 divided by 3 is 10. So that means 21 over 30 in its simplest form is 7/10. You are doing amazing. Let's try one more together, which is a little bit of algebra for your little 5th grade brain. Try number 12 together. Number 12 is 8/28 is equivalent to or equal to m over 7. M in the math, Mrs. Wilkins? Yes, you remember this. M is what we call a variable. It's called a variable because this is unknown. We do not know what m is equivalent to or equal to at this point. So when you see a letter in a math equation or problem, it's called a variable. That means the number is right now unknown. So we need to figure out what number to put here in place of the variable. In other words, we want to know, what does m equal? All right? We do that simply by simplifying the fraction 8/28. How do we simplify a fraction? Right. You find the GCF and then you divide by the GCF. All right, let's simplify 8/28. Let's list the factors for 8. What number times 1 gets me to 8? 8. What number times 2 gets me to 8? 4. Is there anything else we can multiply together to get to 8? Nope, you said it. Now let's find the factors for 28 by using a factor rainbow. What number can we multiply by 1 to get to 28? 28. What number can we multiply by 2 to get to 28? Remember, if you don't know, over in your margin or on a separate sheet of paper, do a division problem. If you do not know what number we can multiply together with 2 to get to 28, divide it. What number times 1? How many times does 2 go into 2? Again, how many times does 2 go into 2? 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Subtract them, left with 0. Bring down the 8. How many times does 2 go into 8? 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Subtract, you're left with 0. So there it is. What number can we multiply by 2 to get to 28? 14. We just figured it out here. Is there anything we can multiply by 3 to get to 28? No. Anything we can multiply by 4 to get to 28? Yes, 7. If you're still learning your multiplication facts, most of you have a multiplication table in what we call an agenda book, or you can Google one, and that might be of help for you if you're having trouble memorizing your multiplication times tables. So now let's look at this. What is the greatest common factor? What is the highest number they have in common? The highest factor they have in common is 4. So that means we divide by 4. Divide the numerator by 4, divide the denominator by 4 to figure out what m is equal to. What's 8 divided by 4? 2. And again, 28 divided by 4 is 7, which they gave you in the problem. So that means m is equal to 2. Write that on the line. M is equal to 2. So I want you to persevere and push through. Try to do some more problems on your own. You got this. You rock at this. You will not stop at this. Persevere and push through. Remember, there are 2 simple rules to simplify a fraction that you should have written down in your notebook. Find the GCF by using a factor rainbow or listing your factors, and then divide by the GCF.